Want to listen to this episode ad-free? Head on over to our Patreon, patreon.com/Ivory Tower Boiler Room, and get a free trial for the ITBR professor level. And you can actually watch this episode as a video episode as well. While you're at it, did you know that on Spotify, we now have a subscription service for $10 a month? You get access to all of our ad-free episodes plus any bonus episodes. So make sure that you rate, review, and follow the Ivory Tower Boiler Room. Make sure that you follow us on Instagram and TikTok at Ivory Tower Boiler Room. And follow Mary DePippi's show, True Crime in Academia, at True Crime in Academia. Thank you all for your support, and without further ado, here's today's episode.
Interrompemos esse podcast para perguntar: quem você quer ser?
Designer, engenheira, pedagoga,
administrador.
Quer saber? O Senac EAD é nota máxima no MEC. Tem cursos de diversas áreas, com conteúdo elaborado por especialistas do mercado e professores mestres e doutores. Ainda tem o Senac Carreiras, conectando estudantes a vagas de emprego em todo o país. Saiba mais em ead.senac.br/graduação.
Hey, true crime friends. Welcome back to another episode of True Crime in Academia. As always, I am your host, Mary DePippi. I hope you all had a wonderful week this week and are enjoying a wonderful weekend. I am definitely taking advantage of my weekend. However, I cannot say that my week was good. It was stressful, lemon stressful. And it's going to be next week. Honestly, I broke out into stress hives. They're starting to go away, and now I'm nervous and anxious, which is, I already have anxiety. I'm just adding on more to it, that they're going to come back, again on Monday, full force. So, I'm just trying to breathe and live my life. But, life just doesn't care that you just want it to be easy breezy lemon squeezy, because they're going to make it difficult, lemon difficult. All right, that's enough with the lemons today. I'm sorry. But yeah, my week has been stressful. But, I'm enjoying this weekend. My boyfriend and I, we did a lot already today, Saturday, the day that this comes out. We went to the farmer's market. We drove around a little bit, got some pretzels from a different shop, not the farmer's market. Then we took Chico for a walk, and then I went to ShopRite, my favorite place. Literally, I love grocery shopping. And then I cooked dinner, which I didn't eat yet because I'm PMSing. And of course, as I was cooking it, my period was like, nah, that's not what we're in the mood for. We're not hungry. And, being that it's that close, I'm a little feisty. So I was kind of just like, well, uterus, if you're not going to make a decision and make this difficult, we just won't eat. So, and not a bad, I'm not trying to be oh my gosh, I'm not eating. It's just if I can't figure out what I want to eat, I'm not going to force myself to eat something because that makes me sick. So, I can just wait. I'm not beyond starving or anything. I'm just, pissed off, trying to get my taste buds to agree with my brain. And they just don't want to because of period hormones. I hate this. People with penises, what's it like to not have to be miserable for a week or two, a month? I would love to know. Please tell me. Just so I can fantasize about how wonderful that must be for you all. Anyway, I have a really good case for you guys this week that I'm excited to get into. But first, let's get into the news update. So some of these stories are from last week, and then one of them is from this week. I was planning on doing this episode last week, but some things came up, and, now we're here. So, our first case, a former priest, 77-year-old James Murphy, was sentenced to a measly 31 months for indecent assault against 4 boys ages between 5 and 11 on April 29th. He was charged. That's not when these crimes happened. The former priest, quote-unquote, ministered in the southeast London area where he was considered a, quote-unquote, trusted figurehead of the community. The cases of the abuse took place between 1975 and 1988. Officers began looking into Murphy when one of his victims came forward to the police in 2019. Apparently, he had also been previously convicted of 11 counts of indecent assault of 5 boys back in 1977. This is why I fucking hate the Catholic Church. I grew up in it, and, I love the things that it tried to teach me, like how to be a good person. But unfortunately, with most Catholics, there's a very few of us, and it's the few of us that I feel that leave it, actually internalize being Jesus and being a good person, and really just not judging, and again, just being a decent, normal fucking human being. But yet you get these fucking Catholics like this who use that authority and that power to hurt children. And there will still be people who don't want to talk about it, or will say it's not true, or just be like, oh, well, this was one isolated incident. No, it's fucking not. Sorry, like I said, I hate the Catholic Church. I'm sorry. I grew up in it. So I think I have a reason, and it's fair enough for me to say, having grown up with it my entire life. I mean, at least he's getting something. I mean, it's just barely over 2 years, but whatever. Again, it's nothing new for the Catholic Church to just shuffle around predators to different churches and just hope they don't do anything that gets the church in a shit ton of trouble, which it's not very Catholic of them, but whatever. Moving on. Last Friday, a former Pennsylvania nurse was sentenced to life in prison after pleading guilty to 3 counts of first-degree murder and 19 counts of attempted murder of her patients. And she did this with lethal doses of insulin. 41-year-old Heather Presti was arrested last May, and she was working in facilities in Allegheny, Armstrong, Butler, and Westmoreland counties in 2020. Like COVID times. She's people are already dying of COVID, and she's injecting fatal doses of insulin. I mean, I hate people. Now, the age of victims range from 43 to 104. Her case was held in Butler County, where, in addition to her life sentence, the judge gave her 308 to 760 years to be served consecutively for the 19 counts of attempted murder. So, needless to say, this bitch ain't ever getting out. Thank God. Relatives of the victims have come forward, and all of them have stated that the former nurse is quote-unquote evil. I couldn't find an exact motive for her murder, but it just seems, much like the case that we're going to talk about today, this is very much cold-blooded and an assertion of power. Lastly, in our news update, and is somewhat good news, yesterday, Adam Montgomery, father of 5-year-old Harmony Montgomery, who has been missing since 2020, has been sentenced to 45 years to life in prison for murdering her. Fina fucking Lee. They've made, or at least they've figured out that the murder took place sometime in March. But despite this whim, this horrible, just horrific excuse of a human being still refuses to tell authorities where he dumped her body. Because of how touchy this case is, I'm not going to get into the specifics of what happened to her. You can absolutely, it's in the source that I have for this case. You can read it there. I feel like he's refusing to tell for one of three, or a combination of these three reasons. One, he's going to jail for life. Who really gives a shit? You know, like I think it might just be pride, and then he just doesn't want to say. Two, he is just, I know he's had some issues with drugs in the past, I think, but it was never as visible, sadly, as her mother's, who is the decent parent in all of this, let me just say, because she really, Harmony's mother did the work and got herself clean and did what was best for her children. Sadly, the courts did not, which, again, it's in the source. I just don't want to get into the specifics because it's a very horrific case, and I don't want to bring all that into your lives if that is not what you are looking for. But like I said, the second, I think he just forgot, unfortunately, and I don't mean to laugh like that's just a frustrated. Yeah, so that's possible. The third reason, I think, could be to get back at Harmony's mother, sadly. You know, I feel like they had a tumultuous relationship, and, you know, it's just one more thing to just dig the knife and twist it in deeper, you know? Again, I don't know for sure. These are just my assumptions. But I think based off of how this piece of shit is, like, I could see that, you know, any of those reasons being why. So, at least, though, he's going to rot in hell. I wish, though, that he could just be like, this is where she is. So, her mother, who actually gave a shit, would be able to, you know, have some closure and maybe have a proper burial. I don't know if they've done that, you know, but obviously, you know, they weren't able to do it with a body. But, you know, I really hope that they eventually find her. It's just so horrific. Anyway, we are going to take a little quick break, and when we get back, we're going to get into this week's case.
Sorry for the podcast interruption, but this is Dr. Andrew Rimby, and I wanted to talk to you all more about the Ivory Tower Boiler Room. So I co-founded ITBR almost 4 years ago. It'll be 4 years in August. And it started as a podcast. So welcome, you know, everyone who's listening to the podcast. This was my baby, and I'm going to continue offering the podcast to you all. I love all of the genres and categories that we have here in the ITBR, including Mary's True Crime and Academia show. So not only is ITBR a podcast, but I also offer different consulting services. So I have podcast consulting. So if you're creating a podcast, you already are a podcaster and you want to expand your social media reach, especially you want to learn about TikTok, Instagram, X, different YouTube strategies, which I'm even building my YouTube show right now. Please reach out to me for consulting with your podcast. Or if you are a small business and you want me to help you with some ideas on how to up your social media game, I've really helped out the Soapbox NY in Port Jefferson on Long Island. You can definitely reach out to me about any small business social media marketing as well. And I also help with college admission essay editing. The season is coming soon. So, you know, make sure you reach out to me. And already, if you want me to start helping consult on the college admission process, I'd be happy to. I also can help you with dissertation thesis editing. And I now am also self-publishing my dissertation. So I'm in the midst of editing too. So I'm in a good headspace to help with editing. Okay, if you want to book me for any of these services, all of my initial consultation meetings, the first hour is always $30 an hour. And I also have book club services with Ivory Tower Boiler Room. So there's been a wonderful group in the Ivory Tower Boiler Room who meet once a month. And right now there's a poll going out about two books, The Book of Gothel by Mary McMinn or Blonde by Joyce Carol Oates. So go to ivorytowerboilerroom.com and scroll down to events and make sure you fill out which book you want to read for the end of May. Okay, for any questions you have about my consulting or to contact me to book me, go to ivorytowerboilerroom.com or email me ivorytowerboilerroom@gmail.com or even message me at Ivory Tower Boiler Room on Instagram. Okay, back to the episode. Hi, this is Dr. Andrew Rimby, and I'm really excited to talk to you all about one of our ITBR sponsors, Broadview Press. Broadview Press is an independent academic publisher in the humanities that produces high-quality, pedagogically useful books for use in university and college classrooms. They publish mainly in English studies, writing, philosophy, and history. They are always publishing with an eye towards diversity, building a strong list of titles from women, people of color, and authors from other marginalized groups. If you haven't heard my Broadview Press interviews, you need to. Recently, I just had on Dr. Shannon Day, who talked about her book, Beyond the Binary, Thinking About Sex and Gender. And in the summer, I had on Dr. Jason Holt, who gave us all a comprehensive history of what it means to be a philosopher who studies sporting culture. And of course, we went back to ancient Greek, literature, mythology, history to look at the roots of athleticism. And last year, I had on Dr. Jeffrey Andrew Weinstock, who's actually going to be coming on the podcast soon to give his thoughts on the new Fall of the House of Usher Netflix series. He talked all about pop culture for beginners. And Broadview Press is offering an exclusive discount because of our sponsorship. So head to broadviewpress.com where you're going to see such a wide range of literature. Use the code Ivory Tower, IVORYTOWER for 20% off site-wide all of their books. Again, it's broadviewpress.com. Enjoy your reading. Are you looking for a new magazine to read where you can get so many book, film, and TV recommendations? Well, then you need to check out the Gay and Lesbian Review. The G&LR is a bi-monthly magazine of history, culture, and politics that publishes essays in a wide range of disciplines, as well as a slew of reviews of books, plays, and movies, and a number of special features. Each issue brings you consistently intelligent, lively, thought-provoking articles focused on a unifying theme. So, for example, their new issue for May and June is called The Celluloid Fishbowl. And it's a nod to Vito Russo's 1981 book called The Celluloid Closet, which documented the flashes of LGBT content in movies before Stonewall when such content was strictly forbidden. So there's so many exciting articles in the May and June issue, including one by Andrew White called Queer Ghosts on Oscar Night that covers so many different LGBTQ films, both when the characters come out of the closet and what happens when characters are already openly queer and they don't need to come out of the closet, like we're seeing with so much of TV and film and literature right now. There's also an article by Andrew Holleran, the acclaimed writer of Dancer from the Dance, who actually reviews All of Us Strangers, which I can't wait to watch and has been much talked about. So please make sure that you use the Ivory Tower Boiler Room code ITBR50 when you go on glreview.org. You'll see on the right side, it says subscribe. You can either subscribe for their digital edition, or if you're like me, I like to still get the magazine delivered as a print magazine. There's nothing just like having a print magazine in front of you. So use ITBR50 to get 50% off of your G&LR subscription. Yes, that's 50% off. So enjoy your reading. And please, if you are subscribing to the Gay and Lesbian Review, and if there's an article you really enjoyed or a review you really liked, or a guest that you really want me to interview from the Gay and Lesbian Review, make sure that you DM me at Ivory Tower Boiler Room. Happy reading, everyone. And thank you to the Gay and Lesbian Review for their sponsorship.
On January 21st, 2014, Perdue Police and West Lafayette Police Department received emergency calls about gunfire on the Perdue campus in the electrical engineering building. 21-year-old senior and teacher's assistant Andrew Boldt was found dead from gunshot wounds and stab wounds in one of the classrooms. The shooter, a then 23-year-old senior named Cody Cousins, thankfully surrendered to police immediately. Andrew Boldt was from West Bend, Wisconsin. He had become an Eagle Scout and was in Boy Scouts all growing up, and loved and excelled at math, robotics, and computers. He was always willing to help someone out when they were having technical issues. He went on to spend 2 summers interning with John Deere, the tractor and all the yard work stuff company. He was interning there in Silvis, Illinois, which is pretty awesome, and I think also just kind of lends to show how intelligent he was. Previous teachers of Andrew described him as a phenomenal young man who had the potential to make the world a better place. He was as smart as he was kind. And at Perdue, during his senior year, he was hired as a teacher's assistant, or what we're going to be referring to them from now on is a TA. By all accounts, Andrew had a very normal, loving upbringing, and he seemed to just be destined for so much more. And it just makes it so much more devastating that, his life was tragically cut short by this man, Cody Cousins. Now, Cody Cousins is from Warsaw, Indiana. I couldn't find out much about his early life, but it seems that he had been struggling with mental health issues for a really long time. According to Cody's mother, Wendy Melancion, I think that's how you pronounce that, who is a mental health professional, she stated that she had tried desperately to get her unwilling son help for his mood disorders. And I just wanted to make that wording clear. Her son wasn't willing. And unfortunately, you can't always force someone to take care of their mental health and, figure out their psychological issues. But, despite the fact that she's a mental health professional, and I don't want anyone to say, oh my gosh, she should have done better for her son, this, that, and the third. She did. She tried. You can't force someone to get better. Just like I say, even with addicts, you can't force someone to get help and to get clean if they're not willing to do the work, which he just wasn't. Now, she stated that he would take medication and feel better. This kind of cycle was happening. He'd feel better, and then after a while, he would stop taking the medication because, it was doing his job. It was doing its job and making him feel better. But he would take that as a sign that he was better and was never sick in the first place. 6 months before Andrew's murder, Cousins visited the Counseling and Psychological Services Department at Perdue 17 times. During those times, he was diagnosed with narcissistic personality disorder, which, sometimes having a diagnosis, in some cases, it is very helpful for people. For Cousins, this really didn't make a difference for him. In the summer of 2013, he started having manic thoughts that actually concerned his mother so much that she did what she had to do, which was involuntarily hospitalize him near their hometown in Indiana. Again, the cycle of taking medication and then stopping started again. Now, Cody's history with Perdue had been rocky, to say the least. He was dropped in the fall of 2011, but was allowed to be readmitted in 2012. He did great, academically speaking, once he was readmitted. He actually made the dean's list 3 out of 6 semesters in his electrical engineering studies. He also was hired to be a TA around the same time that Andrew was. On the morning of January 21st, 2014, Cody Cousins went to his morning classes as normal. He then went to his apartment, grabbed one of his guns and a knife, and returned to campus, where he would then take Andrew Boldt's life in front of 12 other students who Andrew was teaching.
You've all heard me gush about Mandy Made It. Mandy Made It is a craft business, and it's actually owned by my friend Mandy Bengal, who I have known, married to Pippi has known. We all actually became best friends in Main Stage Center for the Arts summer theater camp. So I'm so proud of Mandy. First, she has an arts festival coming up on April 28th. It's called the Gloucester Township Arts Market and Green Fair. There are going to be art vendors, craft vendors, including Mandy, food trucks. It sounds so much fun. I actually am thinking maybe I'm going to attend. So it's in South Jersey, and it's April 28th, a Sunday, from 10 to 3 p.m. So go over to @MandyMadeIt to find out more information about how you can attend the festival. And please, if you see Mandy, say, "Oh, I listened to the Ivory Tower Boiler Room, and that's how I know about your crochet company." So she makes so many wonderful items, especially because we're in the spring into summer. I know that she makes beautiful spring flowers that she crochets. She's made wonderful Pokemon inspired items. I know that my boyfriend, loves Pokemon Go, so this is a great item for him. I actually got my boyfriend a Mandy Made It Scream Ghostface bouquet for Valentine's Day. He loved it. She makes wonderful Disney inspired items. She made me a Hocus Pocus bed and breakfast item, Snow White and the Evil Queen's poisoned apple item. I know she's made Married to Pippi so many true crime items. We're in talks right now to have her make some Ivory Tower Boiler Room crochet items. Make sure that you reach out to Mandy Made It. Let her know that you heard this ad on the Ivory Tower Boiler Room. She loves knowing that you're listening to her ad on the podcast. And also, she'll give you an exclusive item @Mandy Made It on Instagram and Facebook. You've heard me gush over my friend Christian Garcia's podcast called That Old Gay Classic Cinema. Yes, Christian Garcia, who hosts the Smash Rewatch podcast series with me. Remember Smash, where they're putting on a Marilyn Monroe Broadway musical called Bombshell? Well, make sure you listen to our podcast series. His podcast is called That Old Gay Classic Cinema, and it is definitely meant for all of those Turner Classic Movie lovers. So he looks at classic films with a queer lens. So think of him as a queer cinema professor of sorts. He actually had on co-owner of the Soapbox NY, Janine Cucci, to talk about Sunset Boulevard, which the three of us are just obsessed with Sunset Boulevard, and we can't wait for Nicole Scherzinger to be in the revival of Sunset Boulevard on Broadway. He also has episodes about Cat on a Hot Tin Roof, Strangers on a Train. Now that definitely is a queer homoerotic film. The Philadelphia Story, Meet Me in St. Louis, Beauty and the Beast, Sweet Charity, Psycho, Mary Poppins, Hello Dolly, The Wizard of Oz, Vertigo, which I actually was on, and 101 Dalmatians, and the list can go on and on and on. So make sure that you listen to That Old Gay Classic Cinema wherever you get podcasts, like Spotify or Apple. Follow Christian on Instagram at That Old Gay Classic Cinema, and he also has a TikTok. And please make sure that you reach out to him and let him know that you heard this ad on the Ivory Tower Boiler Room. Happy podcast listening. Spring has sprung here on Long Island, and I'm excited to talk about the Soapbox NY, a bath and body boutique located in historic Port Jefferson Village. My good friend Janine Cucci co-owns the Soapbox NY. Not only has she been on the Ivory Tower Boiler Room podcast, but she's also been on my good friend Christian Garcia's podcast. So she gave me a special spring scent from her blending bar. You might ask, Andrew, what is the blending bar? Well, it's what makes the Soapbox NY so unique, in my opinion. They have over 200 essential oils that can be made into shower gel, bubble baths, shampoo, body lotion, an essential oil roller, or even perfume. So, the first scent that I want to highlight is called Peony Blush Suede, an exquisite floral with delicate rose and honey accents and a subtle green freshness. The second is Mimosa and Tonka with notes of sweet golden mimosa mixed with creamy Tonka bean. And the third is Spring Musk, green and fresh with notes of bergamot, orange blossom, and neroli, a clean and fresh musk. So head over to soapboxny.com to place your order. Make sure you follow the Soapbox NY on Instagram, where you also could DM Janine with any questions. And make sure you tell her that Andrew from Ivory Tower Boiler Room sent you.
Andrew's autopsy revealed that he was shot 5 times, 3 times in the head and twice in the lower back. He was then stabbed 19 times. To say this was overkill is literally an understatement. And not to jump ahead, once we talk about motive, but, generally this seems very personal, and we're going to find out that it's not, but just the absolute brutality of this murder is just so unwarranted and so despicable. And again, this was done in front of 12 other younger students. One of the students who was in the classroom during the murder stated that Cousins was the only person in the room who was calm. And that's not meant to be like a compliment. It is so chilling, like, that he did this and was just calm and level-headed and was just like, yep, this is okay. Perdue police arrived on the scene first and before the West Lafayette Police Department. And Cousins surrendered basically immediately. He was then sent to Tippecanoe County Jail, where he was held before and during his trial. Police were able to get a search warrant for his apartment, and between the apartment and the crime scene, police collected the following evidence: a .38 Smith & Wesson 642 revolver, a Gerber knife, 2 laptops, 2 hard drives, flash drives, 2 notebooks, his cell phone, and video footage and documents from the gun store which he legally purchased the murder weapon at. Again. But see, and this is also where it becomes difficult, because if mentally ill people, well, actually, he was diagnosed, so I don't know why they weren't able to find that at that point. I can't remember. I think he bought it before his diagnosis. But either way, he should not have been able to have a gun. There's no way he should have been allowed. But yet, he got it legally. Just saying. Perdue Police Chief John Cox stated that the murder appeared to be an, quote, isolated and intentional act, end quote, and that Andrew had been targeted by Cousins, specifically. Court documents were submitted by the prosecution on February 28th of 2014, with a court hearing on the morning of March 7th. Now, Cousins had a mental evaluation in July, but the findings were remained sealed by Tippecanoe County Superior Court 2. Now, He had also been evaluated beforehand. I didn't bring this up earlier because I couldn't figure out the exact timeline of when this happened. But at some point, aside from the narcissistic personality disorder, Cousins had also been diagnosed with bipolar and schizophrenia, like together, conjoined. Now, again, I am just an armchair therapist for my very little knowledge of what I know of these things. I could see it being a case of all three. You know, his lack of care or remorse for individuals kind of leads me towards that narcissistic personality disorder. But also if he was having mood swings, like with the like manic episodes and things like that, like it was said that he was prone to having, that very much makes sense with bipolar disorder. And then also if he's having certain delusions, then yes, he could also be schizophrenic. So, you know, it's very possible. Clearly in these findings, they decided to seal them. So whatever, we're not going to unfortunately know much more about that, but it does seem that some sort of evaluations were being done. Now, on August 21st, again, 2014, Cousins pled guilty to murder. Cousins and his attorneys had explored the insanity defense, but against his lawyer's advice, Cousins didn't want to do that. Cousins was then sentenced to 65 years in prison on Friday, September 19th. He admitted to the courts that he had lied about his initial motives of thinking, quote, Andrew was evil, end quote. Again, trying to feed into the insanity plea and that he was having these delusions as if he needed to kill him for, you know, again, because he was, quote unquote, evil. But he admitted that he killed Andrew Boldt because he wanted to. He stated that he always does what he wants and deals with the consequences later. So, I mean, this man's never going to get out, at least while he's alive. He'll be 80-something by the time that happens, or his late 70s. So, sorry, I don't do math. English major here. But anyway, you know, he's going to be in there for life. I don't know what the circumstances are for his parole. I doubt they're going to give him parole after just being like, yeah, you know, like I do things that I want to do and then just deal with shit later. That's not the type of person, especially after they killed someone, you just don't let them out on the streets like that. I had also read in some of the sources that he has not stated that he wants any sort of psychological help at this time for, you know, his disorders and things, but it is available to him should he so choose, which, you know, I mean, part of me wants to have people, you know, for people to have redemption and, you know, I just hope that he can get to a point where he wants to get better, because it doesn't seem like he really gives a fuck at this point. And at, you know, because he's done what he's done and he's locked in prison, he knows he's not getting out. At least hopefully not. And like I said, I'm not sure about parole, but I doubt he's gonna just be like, decide, oh yeah, I got nothing better to do, let's try and help myself. You know, I just don't think that's gonna happen. So either way, he's in custody, and hopefully that's where he's going to stay until his dying days. So with that, my darlings, that is all I have for you this week. Don't forget to follow True Crime in Academia on Instagram and TikTok and Threads at True Crime in Academia, and on X, formerly Twitter, at TC in Academia, like True Crime, TC. Also, if you want to listen to this episode ad-free, for the price of a cup of coffee a month, go to patreon.com/Ivory Tower Boiler Room and become a subscriber today. And until next time, my darlings, I will see you all later.